mythological narratives that can be described as Shintoistic are so inextricably linked to everyday Japanese life that a distinction between Japanese mythology and Shinto mythology is often not discernible. Just like Japanese traditions and Shinto traditions, the two concepts are often to be regarded as almost identical, so that it is difficult or sometimes simply impossible to classify a certain phenomenon as exclusively Japanese or Shintoistic. Because characteristic Japanese peculiarities are usually of Shintoistic origin or at least strongly related to Shinto, by virtue of the fact that almost every cultural tradition in Japanese intellectual history is influenced in some way by Shintoistic elements, it would be possible and legitimate to treat them all as a collective mythology. However, it would be highly confusing and unwieldy, especially for a beginner, to attempt to deal with all of this content at once. To be overwhelmed by such a vast amount of information such as names, stories, and concepts would be rather daunting and thus anything but conducive to engagement with the subject. For this reason, I have chosen to focus on what might be broadly defined as pure Shinto mythology. I will deal with everything related to it first and only briefly discuss other mythological ideas at the end. Japanese mythology cosmos. In advance, some short definitions of terms are also necessary. In Japanese mythology, the kami are mentioned at absolutely all times. The Japanese word kami often becomes god or gods in translations of Japanese language texts into Western languages. While this translation is appropriate in some cases, depending on the text, translations such as souls, nature, spirits, essences, or holiness are also possible in Japanese usage. In the context of Shinto, all of these meanings apply in some sense. Moreover, kami are not only existences of supernatural or otherworldly origin, but also deceased ancestors or rulers. It also happens that plants, objects, or even individual parts of other kami are understood as kami. Since there is no German word that combines all these meanings and thus really has exactly the same connotations, I will use the Japanese term untranslated. Furthermore, to understand it is beneficial to understand how the world is constructed according to Japanese mythology. It is composed of the sky, called takamagara, literally high level of the sky, and the earth. Where exactly heaven is located is never mentioned in detail. It is possible that the actual sky is meant, but there are also interpretations according to which the mythology refers to places in Japan that are far away and distant from human civilization, mainly mountains. Heaven and earth are separated from each other and connected by a free-floating bridge called Ama no Ukahashi, literally floating bridge of heaven. Below the earth lies the underworld or world of the dead, Yomi. The etymological origin of the word is not known, which is why it is rather to be understood as a proper name without meaning, to which all the deceased go, regardless of their way of life. In addition, there exists another place, also often referred to as the underworld in Western translations, called Ni no Kuni, literally root land. Depending on the tradition, this place is either identical with the underworld called Yomi, or it is another lower world, a realm of the dead from which life blossoms anew. If in the following the underworld is spoken of, Yomi is always meant. The root country is always named as such for the sake of unambiguity. In the beginning, most of the kami live in heaven and enter the earth only temporarily, if at all, before they return to heaven, die, and thus enter the underworld or retire, which usually just means that they no longer appear in the narrative from that point on. Later, several kami live on earth and are demarcated from those in heaven. Japan, of course, is located on earth since the Japanese state did not yet exist under this name, and its modern form at the time of the mythology's origin, the group of islands that make up present-day Japan, is given different names in myths created at different times. Partly, these are very poetic paraphrases such as Ashirara no Nakatusukuni, literally land within the reed plains, or Toyo Ashihara no Misuo no Kuni, literally land of young rice ears on the rich reed plains. But partly they are the names of former provinces within Japan, sometimes used as synonyms for the whole of Japan or for the whole world. This is because many local tales and anecdotes have been incorporated into the all-Japan mythology.